A single mother of three robbed 20 banks in Montreal while the whole city cheered for her. A 60-year-old man pulled off Canada's first train robbery, then lived quietly on a farm for 2 years while police couldn't figure out who'd done it. And a Winnipeg kitchenware salesman with an IQ of 146 stole $385,000 in gold bars from an airport tarmac, making fake Air Canada uniforms in his garage. 3 outlaws. 3 completely different crimes. One thing in common. None of them were supposed to get away with it. This is Canada's old school outlaws. Monica Proietti grew up in the red light district of East End, Montreal, one of 9 children in a family so deep in poverty that her grandmother ran a literal school for crime in the neighborhood, teaching local kids how to steal and taking a cut of whatever they got. She married a Scottish gangster at 17. When she was 19, 4 of her siblings died in a fire at their tenement building. Her husband was eventually deported. Her next partner was jailed for armed robbery, leaving her alone with 3 kids to raise. That's when she started robbing banks. Not as a getaway driver, not as a lookout. She walked in the front door herself. Monica La Mitraille, the newspapers called her Machine Gun Molly. The name was a bit of an exaggeration. She never actually owned a machine gun. Her weapon was a gold-plated semi-automatic rifle. Her boyfriend gave it to her as a gift, and she used it to fire rounds into the ceiling to get everyone's attention before she cleaned out the cash. Nobody was ever hurt during any of her heists. Between 1965 and 1967, she and her crew hit more than 20 banks and credit unions across Montreal, walking away with around $100,000 in total. She wore different wigs and disguises every time. She changed her clothes between jobs. Police were chasing ghosts. Then it got strange. Despite being one of the most wanted criminals in Quebec, Monica Proietti became something of a folk hero. People in her neighborhood admired her. The press covered her like a celebrity. A criminal professor at the University of Montreal later said, "Here was a woman who was strong, risking her life working with men. She was a real heroine to people. She was actually going to quit. Her last robbery was going to fund a new life in Florida for her and her kids." On September 19th, 1967, she and 2 accomplices hit a credit union in Montreal North and walked out with $3,000. Police identified the car, and a high-speed chase happened through the north end of the city. She crashed into a bus at an intersection. Monica Proietti died at the scene. She was 27 years old. A Quebec film was made about her in 2004. Her daughter, who had grown up watching all this, later got a job at a Montreal bank as a customer service representative. Monica Proietti stole $10,000 over 2 years. Our next outlaw pulled off the first train robbery in Canadian history and walked away with $7,000 in gold dust and bonds worth $300,000. Then lived on a farm for 2 years while nobody had any idea who'd done it. By the time Bill Miner crossed into British Columbia in 1904, he was 57 years old and had already spent more than 35 years behind bars for stagecoach robberies in California. He set himself up near Kamloops as a semi-retired rancher named George Edwards. Friendly old man, popular with the locals. Nobody suspected a thing. On September 10th, 1904, Miner and 2 accomplices climbed aboard the CPR Transcontinental Express near Mission Junction after dark and put a gun to the engineer's head. He said, "Please." That's the kind of outlaw Bill Miner was. He pulled off Canada's first major train robbery, and people mostly laughed. One local was quoted saying, "Oh, Bill Miner's not so bad. He only robs the CPR once every 2 years. The CPR robs us every day." They got away with $6,000 in gold dust, just over $900 in cash, and bonds worth $300,000 that turned out to be untraceable. The CPR and the government offered $11,500 in awards. Nobody collected. Miner lived as George Edwards for 2 more years right there in southern BC. Never ran, never hit particularly hard. Then it went wrong. In 1906, he went back for another CPR train near Kamloops and bungled the whole thing. His gang picked the wrong car. After a night of rifling through mail sacks, they got away with $15 and a bottle of liver pills. Authorities put together the largest manhunt in BC history up to that point. Cowboys, Indigenous trackers, bloodhounds, and the Royal Northwestern Mounted Police combined to track them down. Bill Miner was sentenced to 25 years at New Westminster Penitentiary. He escaped in 1907 by digging under the fence, was caught in the United States in 1911, and died in a Georgian prison in 1913 at the age of 67, still charming everyone who met him. He is widely credited with coining the phrase, "hands up," and the reason a mountain near Princeton, BC carries his name today? Local citizens voted to rename it in 1952, nearly 40 years after he died. They liked him that much. Bill Miner robbed trains. Monica Proietti robbed banks. Our last outlaw took one look at an airport tarmac and thought, nobody's watching that gold very carefully. Ken Leishman grew up in a series of foster homes in Manitoba, dropped out of school, married young, and eventually took a job selling kitchenware door to door to support what would eventually be 7 children. The kitchenware job didn't last long. In November 1957, the company folded. Leishman was 26 years old with a family to feed and no income. The following month, he flew a small plane from Winnipeg to Toronto in the middle of the winter, checked into a luxury hotel, walked into the bank the next morning and robbed it with a handgun. He flew back to Winnipeg the same day. Police were baffled. Nobody ever thought to fly in for a bank robbery and fly home. Over the next decade, Leishman robbed more banks, escaped from prison twice, including once by picking a supposedly unpickable lock with a strip of cloth and a piece of wire, and became one of the most beloved criminals in Canadian history. But his best job was one where he planned from a prison cell. While sitting in Stony Mountain Institution, Leishman had occasionally been taken to the Winnipeg airport for supervised outings, just watching planes. He started noticing the same thing happening every week. A Transair flight from Red Lake, Ontario, rolling in with wooden boxes of gold bound for the Royal Canadian Mint in Ottawa. Nobody seemed to be watching very carefully. When he got out, he got to work. He recruited 4 accomplices, bought winter coveralls and stenciled fake Air Canada logos on them in his garage, walked up to an unattended Air Canada desk at the airport and just took a handful of waybills. When a lookout in Red Lake confirmed a big shipment was coming, they stole an Air Canada cargo van from the airport parking lot, drove it out into the tarmac, flashed the fake paperwork at a crew, and the crew just loaded the gold onto the van. March 1st, 1966, $385,000 in gold bars. Gone. He was caught within days, sentenced to 15 years, escaped from jail again almost immediately, was recaptured in Indiana after a shootout, and eventually served the sentence. He was released in 1974, moved to Red Lake, Ontario, became chairman of the local Chamber of Commerce, ran an air ambulance service flying patients from remote communities to a hospital in Thunder Bay. On December 14, 1979, he disappeared on a Mercy flight over northern Ontario. The wreckage was found the following spring. The bodies of his patient and medical escort were recovered. Ken Leishman's body was never found. Some people up north said he'd done what he always did, got away. A Montreal single woman became a folk hero, a 60-year-old gentleman bandit who said please when he robbed your train, and a kitchenware salesman who stole $385,000 in gold off an airport tarmac with fake uniforms he made in his garage. 3 outlaws, 3 completely different crimes, 1 shared reputation. In a country that usually plays it pretty safe, these 3 didn't. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe for more True North Heists. We post a new Canadian story every weekday, and a long form every Saturday. Which one of these 3 pulled off the most impressive job? Let me know in the comments. Thanks again.